And welcome to Technology Tap. I'm Professor J. Rod. In this episode, security governance, how organizations actually stay secure. Let's tap in. And welcome to Technology Tap. This is Professor J. Rod. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a professor of cybersecurity, and I love helping my students pass the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus exam. If you want to reach me on social media, you can on Instagram at Professor J. Rod, on TikTok at Professor J. Rod, on Facebook at Technology Tap Podcast, and you can always email me at Professor J. Rod that's JROD at gmail.com. I'm also on YouTube, Technology Tap Podcast. And if you want to buy me a coffee, you can at buymeacoffee.com/Professor J. Rod. All right, take a breath. If you're listening to this in your car, let the road fade into the background for a moment. If you're sitting at your desk, lean back just slightly. If you're a student, an IT professional, or someone trying to understand how organizations actually function behind the scenes, this episode is for you. Because today we're not talking about hackers. We're not talking about malware signatures or packet captures. We're talking about how organizations decide what is allowed, what is forbidden, who is responsible, and what happens when things go wrong. Today's episode is about security governance. And governance is one of those topics students often underestimate until they fail an exam question, or worse, they're in a real job and realize, oh, this is how everything actually works. Security governance is the difference between chaos and control, guesswork and accountability, panic and process. By the end of this episode, you understand why policies exist, why standards change but policies don't, why procedures matter more than tools, why laws shape cybersecurity more than technology, and why automation without governance is dangerous. So let's begin where governance always begins, with rules. Let's start with a simple truth. Every organization has rules. Some are written, some are implied, some are ignored until something breaks. In cybersecurity, those rules are called policies. A policy is a high-level statement of intent. It answers questions like, what does the organization allow? What does it prohibit? What does it expect from employees? What happens if those expectations are violated? Policies are not technical manuals. They are not step-by-step instructions. Policies exist to establish governance, ensure compliance, align behavior with organization goals, and create an ethical and legally defensible framework. A policy is something leadership can point to and say, this is what we expect, consistently across the entire organization. Without policies, security becomes subjective, enforcement becomes inconsistent, accountability appears, and legal defense collapse. Courts don't ask, did you try your best? They ask, did you follow your own policy? Common security policies. Most organizations maintain policies such as acceptable use policy, information security policies, incident response policy, disaster recovery policy, business continuity policy, change management policy, and secure SDLL policy. These policies define what must happen, not how to do it. Now here's where exams in real life gets tricky. Policies are mandatory. Guidelines are recommendations. Guidelines provide flexibility. suggest best practice, adapt to roles of departments, are not enforced the same way as policies. Think of it as this way. A policy says, you must use strong passwords. A guideline says, here are recommended password practices. Same direction, different level of authority. If policies are the rules, then procedures are the instructions. A procedure is a step-by-step repeatable process designed to ensure tasks are performed correctly, performed consistently, and performs in compliance with policy. Procedures eliminate guesswork, trivial knowledge, and I thought someone else was doing it. Examples of procedures. Common security procedures include user onboarding, user offboarding, background checks, desktop deployment, patching and updates, incident response steps, and ticket escalation. If a task must be done the same way every time, it needs procedure. In security operations, procedures are often bundled into playbooks. A playbook is a collection of action used during incidents, alerts, and operational environments. Playbooks answer what does what, who does what, in what order, using what tools, under what conditions. When something breaks at 2 a.m., no one wants philosophy. They want a playbook. Here's a critical exam concept. Policies rarely change. Standards change often. A standard defines specific technical or operational requirements. Standards support policies, contain measurable criteria, are often maintained by subject matter experts, and change as technology evolves. Common industry standards include ISO IESC 27000 series, NIST 800 series, PCI DSS, and FIPS, FIPS. Organizations adopt these standards to demonstrate compliance, reduce liability, and align with industry best practice. Organizations can also create internal standards such as encryption requirements, coding standards, audit practice, and configuration baseline. Policies say what? Standards define how much, how strong, and how specific. Cybersecurity does not exist in a vacuum. It exists inside legal systems. Organizations must comply with global laws, national laws, state and local laws, industry regulations, and privacy legislation. Governance ensures these laws are understood, implemented, and enforced. Privacy legislations include the GDPR, CCPA, FERPA, HIPAA, COPPA. Each line defines what data must be protected, who can access it, how long can it be retained, and what happens when it's exposed. All right, let's look at the definitions. GDPR, General Data Protection Compliance does not guarantee security, it's a comprehensive, but a lack of compliance almost guarantees the Union that governs how personal data of EU governance answers the question: who is responsible? Organizations use personal data, names, emails, IP address, centralized governance, location data, etc., and the privacy model balances individual control, who it applies to, any organization anywhere in the world that processes data of EU Key roles include data concepts, data controller, basis for data processor, data minimization, rights to those roles define who decides, who implements, the right to be who maintains, and who is responsible. Forgotten and breach notification. Let's go over each one. Heavy fines for non-compliance. The data owner is the why matters for the exam or role with ultimate responsibility, data controller, and data processor role set of data. Emphasize the role determines how the data is classified, and who may access it, and how it should be protected. To memorize this for the exam, just remember key responsibilities determines data classification plus personal data, public, internal, confidential, restricted. Approves CCPA, or denies California Customer defines Consumer Privacy Act, ensures compliance with policies and laws, state-level privacy accepts law, risk associated that gives California residents control what over they don't do is collect daily personal maintenance, manage what it protects, patching, personal information of California residents. Customer example is related to data collection and sale, students' records, who it applies to, and decides for business who can access grades, for profit business that how long records are in California, and what security or handle data of California residents. and meet
if the
certain
role
revenue or
decides,
data
approves,
thresholds
or owns risk,
key concepts,
that's the data owner.
right to know what data is
The
collected,
data controller
right to
determines
delete
why
personal
and
data,
how personal
right to
data
opt
is
out of data
processed.
selling.
The
And
role is
transparency
especially
requirement.
important in privacy and
Why
regulatory
it matters
contexts
on the
such
exam,
as
demonstrates
GDPR.
state-level
Key responsibilities,
privacy regulation,
determines the purpose of
often
data
compares
collection,
to
decides how
GDPR,
data
but
is
less
used
strict.
and processed, ensures
Exam
lawful
memory,
processing, defines
CCPA
retention
equals
and
California
deletion
plus
policies, and ensure
data
privacy
rights.
compliance.
FERPA, Family
What they don't
Education
do
Rights and Privacy Act,
is
what
maintain
is it?
infrastructure,
FERPA is
perform
a U.S.
technical
federal law that
security
protects
tasks,
the privacy
and
of
store
students'
data
education
themselves.
records.
Real-world
What it
example,
protects,
a company
grades,
HR department
transcripts,
deciding
class schedules, and
when
student
personal
ID
data is
information.
collected,
Who it applies to,
how
schools
would
and
it be used,
institutions receiving
is it
U.S.
payroll
federal
benefits,
funding,
and how long would it be
and K through
retained?
12 schools and college
If
universities.
the question mentions
Key
privacy
concepts,
law or deciding
parents
why
or
data
eligible
is
students
processed,
have the right to
that's
access
the data
records,
controller.
request corrections,
Data
and
processor.
control disclosure
Data
of records.
processor processes
Why
data
it matters
behalf
on
of
the
data
exam,
controller,
common
who
in
follows the
education
controller's
sector scenarios,
instruction.
and tied to
The
access
role
control
does not
and least
decide
privilege.
how or why
To
the
memorize
data
this
is
for the
used.
exam,
Key
FERPA
responsibilities,
equals student records, processes data according to the
HIPAA,
instructions,
Health Industry
implements
Portable
security
and
controls,
Accountability
maintains
Act.
confidentiality.
What is it?
And
HIPAA
reports
is a
breach to
U.S.
the
federal
controller.
law that
What
protects
they-
medical
they
and health
do not
information.
do, what it
will
protects,
decide the purpose of data
protected health
collection,
information,
define
medical
data retention
records,
policies,
billing
or
information,
own the data.
health insurance data.
A cloud payroll
Who it applies
provider
to,
processing
healthcare
and
providers,
employee payroll data
health
for a
plans,
company. That's an example.
healthcare cleaning house, business
of a data
associates
processor.
handling PHI.
For the exam, if the role
Key
is doing the
concepts,
work but not making
privacy
decisions,
rules,
that's the data
security
processor.
rules, administrative, physical,
And last is
technical
data
safeguards,
custodian.
and breach
The data
notification
custodian is
exam.
responsible for the technical protection, maintenance,
Breach
and
notification
availability
requirements.
of the
Why
data.
does it matters on the exam?
This role
Frequently
focuses
tested
on
in
how
healthcare
data is
security
stored,
scenarios,
secured, and
strong
backed up.
focus on
Key
confidentiality and
responsibilities,
access control.
implements access
For the exam,
control, performs
HIPAA
backup
equals
and restores,
healthcare plus personal
applies
health
patches,
information.
ensures system availability, and protects
Children's
data
online
integrity
privacy
and
protection.
confidentiality.
What
What
is
they
it?
don't
It's
do
a U.S. federal
is
law
decide
that
how data
protects
is
the
used,
online privacy
classify
of
the
children
data
under the
or
age of 13.
approve access policies.
What it protects,
Real-world
personal data
example,
of children under 13,
a system administrator,
online
managing servers
identifiers,
that store
names,
sensitive
location,
data.
photos, and videos.
On the exam,
Who it
if the
applies
role
to,
sounds like
websites
IT
and online
operations
services
or
directed at
caretaking,
children.
that's a
Services that
data
knowingly collect
custodian.
data from children. Key concept, parental consent required,
Change
data
is
minimization,
inevitable.
disclosure
Uncontrolled
requirements,
change
and
is
safe handling
dangerous.
of children's data. Why it
Change
matters,
management is a
appears in
structured
online
process
services
used to
and privacy
evaluate
scenarios
changes,
and tied to access
assess
control,
risk,
test
consent,
outcome,
and to memorize
and
minimize
for the exam.
disruption.
COPA equals
Effective
kids plus
change
online
management
privacy.
includes
Stakeholder input, change review
Here's an
boards,
important distinction.
impact analysis,
Compliance
testing,
does not
rollback
guarantee
plans, and
security,
maintenance windows.
but a lack of compliance
Allow list
almost guarantees
speeds
these
trust,
speed trust changes and
governance
reduces
answers the
approvals.
question.
Deny list,
Who is responsible?
block known risk,
Organizations
enforce
use
security
boards,
change management exists to
centralized
protect
governance,
availability,
decentralized
integrity,
governance,
and security.
Each model balances control.
Automation is
flexibility,
powerful.
risk,
Automation
and
without
accountability.
governance is chaos at
Key
machine
roles
speed.
include
Data
automation,
owner,
reduces
data
human
controller,
error,
data
improves
processor,
consistency,
and data
speeds
custodian.
execution, and
Those
creates
roles
audit
define
trails.
who decides,
Orchestration,
who implements,
coordinates
who maintains,
multiple automated
and who is
tasks,
responsible.
links systems together.
Let's
and
go over
scales
each
response.
one. The data owner
Automation
is the individual
complexity,
or role with
cost,
ultimate responsibility
single points
and
of
authority
failure,
over a
and
specific
technical
set
debt.
of data.
Automation
The role
must be
determines how the
governed,
data is
classified,
documented,
who
and
may
monitored.
access it, and how it should
All
be
right,
protected.
let's do our questions.
Key responsibilities
Our
determines
four
data
questions,
classification.
whatever.
Just
Reminder,
reminder,
I
I
read
read
the
the question
question
first, give you the choices,
approves or denies
and read them
access
again,
request, defines
with the
acceptable
choices,
use,
and then give you the answer.
ensures
Ensures
compliance with policies
All right,
and
let's
laws.
do it. Let's hopefully you
accepts
get risk
4 for 4.
associated with the data.
Question 1.
What they don't do
Which
is perform
document
daily
provides
technical
step-by-step
maintenance,
instructions
manage
to
backup
ensure
or patching,
tasks are performed
or
consistently?
systems.
A. Policy. B.
Example is
standard,
the
C.
department chair
procedure,
who
or
owns
D.
student
guidelines.
records. And
Which
decides
document provides
who can access
step-by-step
grades,
instructions to ensure
how long
tasks
records are
performed
retained, and what
consistently?
security level is required.
A. Policy. B. Standard.
If the
C.
role
procedure,
decides,
or D.
approves,
guidance.
or owns
Give me
risk,
5 seconds
that's the
to think
data
about
owner.
it.
5,
The data controller
4,
determines why
3,
and how
2,
personal data is
1.
processed.
The answer
The role
is C,
is especially important in privacy
a
and
procedure
regulatory
specifically
contexts,
designed
such
to
as
describe how a
GDPR.
task is performed. Key
Step by
responsibilities
step in a repeatable
determines the
and
purpose
compliant
of data
manner.
collection,
Key
decides
characteristics
how data is used
of
and processed,
procedures include
ensures
step-by-step
lawful
instructions,
processing,
checklist of
defines workflows
retention,
and
designed for
deletion
operational
policies
consistency
and ensure privacy.
Used by technicians,
compliance.
administrator,
What they
SOC
don't
analyst,
do is
ensures
maintain
compliance
infrastructure,
with policies
perform
and
technical
standards.
security.
Why the
tasks,
other options are
and
incorrect.
store data themselves.
A. Policy.
Real world
Policies
example,
define
company
what
HR
must be
department
done,
deciding
not how.
when
They're
personal
high level
data
and
is
non-technical.
collected.
B. Standard. Standards
used,
define specific
payroll
requirements.
benefits, and how long
For
would it be
example,
retained.
encryption strength, password length.
If the question
But they do
mentions
not
privacy
outline
law or
operational
deciding
steps.
why data is
And last,
processed,
guidelines.
that's the data.
Guidelines are optional requirements and allow
Data
flexibility. They are
Data
not mandatory
processor
or
processes data on
structured.
behalf of the data controller.
Exam tip.
Who follows the
If the
controller.
question says step by step,
checklist,
the role does not
repeatable,
decide
or
how to do
or why the
something,
data is
that's a
used.
procedure.
Key responsibilities.
Question 2.
Processes.
Which
processes
statement
data according
best
to the
describes
instructions,
the relationships
implements
between
security controls,
policies and standards?
maintains confidentiality.
A.
and
Standards
reports
are
breaches to the
broader than
controller.
policies.
What they
B. They do
policies
not
do
change more often than
decide
standards.
the purpose of data
C.
collection.
Standards
define data
provide
retention
detailed
policies
requirements that
or
support
own the data.
policies. Or D.
A cloud payroll
policies
provider
are optional
processing and
recommendations.
employee
I'll
payroll
read it
data
again.
for a company. That's an example.
Which statement best describes the relationship
of
between
data
policies
processor.
and standards?
For the exam,
A.
if the role is
Standards
doing the
are broader
work
than
but not making
policies.
decisions,
B.
that's the data processor.
Policies change more than standards.
And last
C.
is data custodian.
Standards provide
The data
detailed
custodian is
requirements
responsible
that
for
support
the
policies,
technical
or
protection,
D.
maintenance, and
Policies
availability
are
of
optional
data.
requirements.
This role focuses on
Think about
how
it.
data is stored,
5,
secured, and backed
4,
up.
3,
Key responsibilities.
1.
Implements access
The answer is
control,
C.
performs
Standards
backup and
provide
restores,
data requirements
applies
that support
patches,
policies.
ensures system
Why?
availability.
This
and protects
question
data
tests your
integrity
understanding
and
of governance
confidentiality.
hierarchy.
What they don't
Policies
do
are
is
high-level,
decide how
stable
data
documents
documents
that define
classify the
organization's
data
intent.
or approve
Standards
access
translate
policies.
that into
real-world example.
that intent into
a system
specific
administrator
measurable
managing
requirements.
servers that store
Examples.
sensitive data. All sensitive data must
On
be
the exam,
protected.
if the role sounds
The standard
like
is
IT
sensitive
operations
data
or
must use
caretaking,
AES 256
that's a
encryption
data
at
custodian.
rest. Change is
Standards
inevitable.
are more
Uncontrolled
technical.
change more
dangerous.
frequently than policies. Are
Change
often
management
maintained by
is a
subject
structured
matter
process
experts used to
can
evaluate
reference
changes,
industry
assess
frameworks
risks like NIST,
test outcome,
PCI DSS,
and minimize disruption.
Why the other options are
Effective
incorrect?
change management
A.
includes
Standards are broader than
stakeholder
policies.
input, change
This is
review
reversed.
boards,
Policies are
impact
broader.
analysis,
B.
testing,
Policies change more than
rollback
standards.
plans, and maintenance windows.
That's incorrect. Policies
Allow
are
lists,
intentionally stable.
standards
Trust
evolve with technology.
Speed trust changes and reduces approval.
Policies
Deny
are
lists,
optional
block known
recommendations
risk,
that
and
enforce
incorrect.
security boundaries.
Policies are
Change
mandatory
management
and exist to
enforceable.
protect availability,
Here's an exam
integrity,
tip.
and security.
If questions mention details,
Automation is
requirements,
powerful.
or specific
Automation without
configurations,
governance is
that's
chaos
equals
at
standards.
machine speed. Automation
Question 3.
reduces human error.
What role is typically
improves
responsible for
consistency,
maintaining
speeds
and
execution,
protecting data,
and creates
but not
audit trails.
deciding how to use them?
Orchestration.
A. Data
Coordinates
owner.
multiple
B.
automated
Data
tasks.
controller.
Links
C.
systems together
Data processor.
and scales
Or D.
response.
Data custodian. I'll read it
Automation
again.
introduces
What
complexity,
role is typically
cost,
responsible for
single points of
maintaining
failure,
and protecting
and
data,
technical debt.
but not deciding how it's
Automation
used?
must be governed,
A. Data owner,
documented, and
B.
monitored.
Data controller.
All right,
C.
let's
Data
do our
processor. Or D.
questions.
Data custodian.
4 questions.
Give you
and
5 seconds to think about
those
it.
of you, just a reminder,
5,
I read the question
4,
first, give you the
3,
choices,
2,
and read them again.
1. The answer
with
is
choices,
D.
and then give
Data
the answer
custodian.
and why.
A data
All right,
custodian
let's do
is
it. Let's
responsible
hopefully
for the
you get 4 for
care and
4.
protection of data.
Question
Not
1.
decision making.
Which document
Typical
provides
responsibilities
step-by-step
include
instructions to ensure
managing
tasks
task
are
control,
performed
performing
consistently?
backups,
A.
applying
Policy,
patches,
B.
ensuring
Standards,
secure
C.
storage,
Procedure, or
and
D.
maintaining
Guidelines.
availability and integrity.
Which document provides
They do not
step-by-step
decide how the data is
instructions to
used,
ensure tasks are
why the
performed
data is collected,
consistently?
and the retention
A.
requirements.
Policy, B. Standards,
Why the other
C.
options are
Procedure,
incorrect?
or D. Guidance.
A.
Give you
Data
5
owner
seconds. Think
owns
about it.
the data and determines the
5,
classification and
4,
usage.
3.
B. Data
2,
controller
1.
determines why
The
and
answer is
how
C.
data is processed.
Procedure.
Commonly in
A
privacy
procedure
laws,
specifically designed to
and
describe
C,
how
data
tasks must
processors
perform,
processes data
step by
on behalf
step
of the
in a
controller,
repeatable and
but
compliant
does not
manner.
maintain
Key
infrastructure.
characteristics of
Exam
procedures
tips.
include
If
step-by-step
the role sounds
instructions,
like IT operations
checklists
or
maintenance
workflows or designed for
caretaking,
operational
that's the
consistency,
custodian. Used by technicians,
All right, so
administrators,
far
and
we've had
stock
3,
analysts.
hopefully,
Ensure
we've gotten 3 out of
compliance
3
with policies and
Now let's
standards.
do the last one. Why the other
Question
options
4.
are incorrect.
What is the primary goal
policy.
of change
Policies
management?
define
A.
what must
Increase
be done,
automation.
not how. They're
B.
high level
Eliminate
and
downtime.
non-technical. C.
B.
Minimize
Standard
risk while
standards
implementing
define
changes.
specific
Or D.
requirements.
Speed up
For example,
deployments.
encryption
Read it
strength,
again.
password length.
But
What
they
is
do
the
not
primary
outline
goal of change
operational
management?
steps.
A.
Last,
Increase
guidelines.
automation. B.
Guidelines
Eliminate
are optional
downtime.
requirements and allow
C.
flexibility.
Minimize risk.
They are not mandatory
while
or
implementing
step-driven.
changes. Or D. Speed
Exam
up
tip.
deployments.
If
Give
the
you 5 question
seconds.
says
Think
step
about
by
it.
step checklist,
5,
repeatable,
4,
or how to do
3,
something, that's
2,
a procedure.
1.
Question
Correct answer
2.
is C.
Minimize
Which
risk
statement
while
best
implementing
describes
changes?
the relationship
Change
between
management
policies
exists
and
to
standards?
control risk, not
A.
eliminate change.
Standards are
The
broader
primary
than
purpose
policies.
is to ensure
B.
that changes are
Policies change
reviewed,
more often than standards.
impacts are assessed,
C. Standards
systems are
provide
tested,
detailed
and
requirements
rollback
that support
plans
policies.
exist.
Or D.
And business disruption
Policies
is
are
minimized.
optional recommendations.
Downtime
I'll read
may
it
still
again.
occur, but it is
Which
planned,
statement best
communicated,
describes the
and
relationship
controlled.
between policies and standards?
Why the other options
A.
are incorrect?
Standards are
A.
broader than
Increase
policies.
automation.
B.
Automation may be
Policies
used,
change
but it's
more
not
than
the primary
standards.
goal.
C.
B.
Standards
Eliminate
provide
downtime.
detailed
Downtime
requirements
cannot
that
always
support
be eliminated,
policies.
only
Or
managed.
D. Policies are
And
optional
D.
requirements.
Speed up deployment is
I'll
also
give you 5
incorrect.
seconds.
Think
Speed
about it. Without control
5,
increases
4,
risk.
3, 2,
Exam tip.
1.
If the
The
question
answer is
mentions
C.
risk,
Standards provide
impact
data
analysis,
requirements that
rollback,
support policies.
or approval,
Why?
that is,
This question tests your
change
understanding
management.
of governance hierarchy.
Now,
Policies
hopefully,
are high-level,
you got them
stable
all right.
documents that
4 for 4.
define
You did. Pat
organizations'
yourself on the
intent.
back. Congratulations.
Standards translate
Excellent
that
job.
into
We love
that intent into specific,
doing
measurable
these
requirements.
4 for 4 questions.
Examples.
All right.
All sensitive
Let's close
data
this up.
must be protected.
Security
The standard
governance
is sensitive
not
data
glamorous,
must use
but it is
AES
foundational.
256 encryption.
Tools
at best.
change, threat evolves,
Governance
standards
endures.
are more
If you
technical.
understand governance,
Change
you
more frequently
understand
than
how
policies
organizations actually
are often
survive.
maintained by
Incidents,
subject matter
audits,
experts, lawsuits,
it can
and
reference
change. industry
and that's understanding.
frameworks like
That's
NIST
what
or
separates
PCI DSS.
technicians from
Why the other
professionals.
options are incorrect?
A,
Thanks for listening to
standards
this
are broader than
episode
policies.
of, I think
This
it's
is
chapter
reverse.
14
Policies
of the
are
Security
broader.
Plus exam. I think we
B,
have 2 more
policies
left.
change more than standards.
And then we will go over and
That's
start
incorrect.
doing the
Policies
Tech
are
Plus
intentionally stable.
Standards evolve
I'm
with
Professor
technology.
J-Rod, and as
D,
always,
Policies
tapping
are
into
optional
technology.
recommendations. That's incorrect. Policies are mandatory and enforceable. Here's an exam tip. If questions mention details, technical requirements, or specific configurations, that's equal standards. Question 3. What role is typically responsible for maintaining and protecting data but not deciding how to use them? A. Data owner. B. Data controller. C. Data processor. Or D. Data custodian. I'll read it again. What role is typically responsible for maintaining and protecting data but not deciding how it's used? A. Data owner. B. Data controller. C. Data processor. Or D.
We're
Data
now part of the
custodian.
Pod
Give you 5 seconds to
Magic
think about
Network.
it. 5,
Follow me
4,
at
3,
TikTok at Professor
2,
J-Rod. That's
1.
J-R-O-D.
The answer is D.
Or you can
Data
email me
custodian.
at Professor J-Rod.
A data custodian
J-R-O-D
is responsible for the care and
@gmail.com.
protection of data, not decision making. Typical responsibilities include managing access control, performing backups, applying patches, ensuring secure storage, and maintaining availability and integrity. They do not decide how the data is used, why the data is collected, and the retention requirements. Why the other options are incorrect? A. Data owner owns the data and determines the classification and usage. B. Data controller determines why and how data is processed, commonly in privacy laws. And C. Data processors processes data on behalf of the controller but does not maintain infrastructure. Exam tip. If the role sounds like IT operations, maintenance, or caretaking, that's the custodian. All right, so far we've had 3. Hopefully you gotten 3 out of 3. Now let's do the last one. Question 4. What is the primary goal of change management? A. Increase automation. B. Eliminate downtime. C. Minimize risk while implementing changes. Or D. Speed up deployments. I'll read it again. What is the primary goal of change management? A. Increase automation. B. Eliminate downtime. C. Minimize risk while implementing changes. Or D. Speed up deployments. Give you 5 seconds to think about it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The correct answer is C. Minimize risk while implementing changes. Change management exists to control risk, not eliminate change. The primary purpose is to ensure that changes are reviewed, impacts are assessed, systems are tested, and rollback plans exist, and business disruption is minimized. Downtime may still occur, but it is planned, communicated, and controlled. Why the other options are incorrect? A. Increase automation. Automation may be used, but it's not the primary goal. B, eliminate downtime. Downtime cannot always be eliminated, only managed. And D, speed up deployment is also incorrect because speed without control increases risk. Exam tip. If the question mentions risk, impact analysis, rollback, or approval, that is change management. Now, hopefully, you got them all right. 4 for 4. If you did, pat yourself on the back. Congratulations. Excellent job. We love doing these 4 for 4 questions. All right, let's close this up. Security governance is not glamorous, but it is foundational. Tools change, threat evolves, governance endures. If you understand governance, you understand how organizations actually survive incidents, audits, lawsuits, and change. And that's understanding. That's what separates technicians from professionals. Thanks for listening to this episode of, I think it's chapter 14 of the Security Plus exam. I think we have 2 more left. And then we will go over and start doing the Tech Plus exam. I'm Professor J. Rod, and as always, keep tapping into technology. This has been a presentation of Little Cha-Cha Productions, art by Sarah, music by Joe Kim. We're now part of the Pod Match Network. You can follow me at TikTok at Professor J Rod, that's J-R-O-D, or you can email me at professorjrod, J-R-O-D, @gmail.com.